I still remember the exact moment my world started to crack. It was a quiet afternoon when my phone suddenly rang. I was in the middle of a meeting, but the second I saw my wife's name on the screen, I stepped outside to answer. Her voice was shaking. "Ethan, it's an emergency. My parents, they're near death. I need to go right now." Those words hit me like a punch straight to my chest. I didn't ask questions. I didn't stop to think. I just reacted. Because when someone you love is in pain, you move. My name is Ethan Miller. I've always believed I had a stable and honest life. I work as a project manager for a construction company in Chicago. It's not a glamorous job, but it's real. It pays the bills. It gave me a home. And most importantly, it gave me the life I thought I always wanted. A few years ago, I married Emily Carter. She was kind, soft-spoken. The kind of woman who made you feel like home was not a place, but a person. At least, that's what I believed. We didn't have children yet, but we had plans. Big plans. We talked about buying a lake house one day. Maybe starting a small business together, growing old together on a quiet porch with coffee and memories. That was the future I believed in, until that phone call. "Where are you?" I asked her. "I'm already on my way," she said quickly. "They're at home. It's really bad. I don't know if they'll make it." Her voice cracked. I grabbed my keys without even thinking. "I'm coming too," I said. "No!" She snapped suddenly, too fast, too sharp. Then she paused, and her tone softened. "I mean, you don't have to. It's chaotic here. I'll call you once I know more." That was the first moment something felt off. But I pushed the thought away, because fear makes you ignore red flags. I got into my car anyway. My hands were shaking as I drove. Her parents lived across town, and traffic felt heavier than usual. Every red light felt like a personal attack. Every slow car in front of me felt like an obstacle between me and helping my wife. I kept calling her. No answer. Again, no answer. I told myself she was busy. Maybe talking to doctors. Maybe crying. Maybe helping. I wanted to believe that. I needed to believe that. When I finally turned into her parents' street, something didn't feel right. No ambulance, no flashing lights, no crowd, no neighbors standing outside whispering. The house looked normal. Too normal. My heart started to pound harder. Maybe I was just early, I told myself. Maybe help hadn't arrived yet. I parked my car and walked quickly toward the front door. As I got closer, I heard something. Laughter, soft music, glasses clinking. I froze. My brain refused to process what my ears were hearing. This didn't sound like a house where people were dying. This sounded like a gathering, a calm, relaxed gathering. I stepped onto the porch. My hand hovered over the door. For a moment, I hesitated, because deep down, I already knew. Something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. I pushed the door open slowly, and what I saw on the other side stopped my heart. People sitting in the living room, smiling, drinking, talking casually like it was a normal day. And in the middle of it all, my wife, standing there, healthy, calm, laughing. My chest tightened, my throat went dry. Every emotion I had, fear, worry, panic, turned into something else. Something colder, something heavier, something dangerous. Betrayal. She turned her head and saw me, and in that exact moment, her smile disappeared. Her face went pale. Her eyes widened with pure shock, like she had just seen a ghost. "Ethan." Her voice barely came out. The room went silent. Everyone turned to look at me, and I stood there, at the doorway, realizing that the emergency, the dying parents, the panic, it was all a lie, and I had just walked straight into it. The moment my wife said my name, the entire room froze. I stood there in the doorway, my hand still on the handle, my heart pounding so hard it felt like it might break through my chest. Nobody spoke. Nobody moved. The only sound in the room was the soft music playing in the background and the quiet clink of a glass being set down. My eyes stayed locked on her. Emily, the woman who had just told me her parents were near death. The woman who was now standing in a perfectly normal living room, surrounded by people, smiling just seconds ago. I felt something inside me shift. Something that had always trusted her suddenly didn't. "What is this?" I finally asked. My voice came out calm, too calm, the kind of calm that hides a storm. Emily swallowed hard. It's not what it looks like," she said quickly. I let out a short breath through my nose. "Then tell me what it looks like," I replied. Nobody in the room dared to speak. Her parents sat quietly on the couch, healthy, alert, completely fine. No sign of sickness, no sign of emergency. Her mother avoided eye contact. Her father looked down at his hands. That silence said more than any words could. Emily stepped toward me slowly. "Ethan, I was going to tell you later," she said softly. "Tell me what?" I asked. My chest felt tight, but I refused to raise my voice. I wasn't going to give her the comfort of seeing me lose control. She hesitated, and in that hesitation, the truth started to show. "It's just a small gathering," she said finally. "My cousin came into town and a gathering." I cut in quietly. My eyes moved around the room again. There were decorations on the table, plates, drinks, even a cake, a celebration, not an emergency. "You told me your parents were dying," I said. The words felt heavy as they left my mouth. Everyone in the room shifted uncomfortably. One of her relatives quietly stood up and walked toward the kitchen, clearly trying to escape the tension. Emily's eyes started to water. "I didn't want you to come," she whispered. That sentence hit harder than anything else. Not, "I'm sorry," not "I panicked," not "I made a mistake." "No, I didn't want you here." "Why?" I asked. Just one word, but it carried everything. Pain, confusion, anger, betrayal. She opened her mouth, then closed it again. Her silence felt like a confession. Her father finally cleared his throat. "Son, it's not a big deal," he said, forcing a weak smile. "It's just a family thing." I turned my head slowly and looked at him. A family thing. That phrase echoed in my mind. A family thing that I wasn't part of. "I am her husband," I said quietly. The room went still again. "And you told me your parents were dying just to keep me away from a party?" No one answered, because there was no good answer. Emily stepped closer to me, her voice shaking. "You don't understand," she said. "Then help me understand," I replied. There was a long pause, the kind of pause that feels like time itself has stopped. And then she said something that I will never forget. "We just wanted one night, without you." It felt like the floor disappeared beneath my feet. Without me, her family, her home, her life, a place where I clearly did not belong. I felt heat rise in my chest, but I forced myself to stay still. "Is that how you see me?" I asked. "As someone you need a break from?" She shook her head quickly, but her eyes couldn't meet mine. "It's not like that. It sounds exactly like that," I said. Her mother finally spoke, her voice cold and sharp. "You've always been different from us," she said. "You don't really fit in with this family." There it was, the truth, not hidden anymore, not softened, not disguised. I nodded slowly. Every piece of the puzzle started coming together in my mind. The quiet conversations that stopped when I entered the room, the events I was too busy to attend, the small comments that never felt right. All of it. It wasn't in my head. It was real. Emily reached for my hand, but I stepped back. That small movement said everything. I saw the hurt flash across her face, but I couldn't ignore my own. "You lied to me," I said. My voice was steady, controlled, but inside, something was breaking. "You used fear to control me," I continued. "You made me believe your parents were dying, just so you could keep me away." Tears rolled down her cheeks. "I didn't think you'd come," she whispered. I let out a quiet, bitter laugh. "Of course I came," I said. "Because I love you." Those words hung in the air, heavy, painful, real. And for the first time since I walked into that house, I realized something that changed everything. Love should never feel like this. I looked around the room one last time, at the people who didn't want me there, at the woman who had just lied to me without hesitation, at the place that was supposed to feel like family, but never did. And in that moment, a quiet decision started forming inside me, a decision that would change all of our lives. I looked back at Emily. Her eyes were begging, her hands were shaking, but it was too late. The damage was done. "I'm leaving," I said calmly. "Ethan, please," she cried, but I shook my head. "No," I said softly. "You already made it clear." I turned around and walked out of that house, step by step, without looking back, without saying another word, because sometimes silence is louder than anything you could ever say. As I got into my car and closed the door, I sat there for a long moment, staring straight ahead, breathing slowly, letting the truth settle into my chest. My marriage was not what I thought it was, and what I had just discovered was only the beginning. I didn't drive home right away. I just sat there inside my car, both hands gripping the steering wheel, staring at nothing. The engine was off. The street was quiet, but inside my head, everything was loud. Her voice, Herr Lee, her words, "We just wanted one night without you." That sentence kept repeating over and over again. Each time it echoed, it hurt a little deeper. I leaned back in my seat and closed my eyes. And for the first time in a long time, I let myself remember all the little things I had ignored, all the moments that didn't make sense, all the times I told myself I was overthinking. I remembered family dinners where conversations would suddenly change when I walked in. I remembered being forgotten in invitations. I remembered Emily saying, "It's just a small thing. You wouldn't enjoy it anyway." At the time, I believed her. Now, I realized the truth. It wasn't that I wouldn't enjoy it. It was that I wasn't wanted there. A heavy feeling settled in my chest. Not just anger, not just sadness, something deeper. A quiet realization. I had been slowly pushed out of my own marriage, and I didn't even notice. My phone buzzed. I looked down. Emily, calling me. Again, and again, and again. I watched the screen light up, then go dark, then light up. Again. I didn't answer. Not this time. Not anymore. After a while, I finally started the car. But instead of driving home, I drove somewhere else. Somewhere quiet. Somewhere I could think. I ended up at a small lake not far from the city. It was a place I used to go when life felt overwhelming. A place where I could breathe. I stepped out of the car and walked toward the water. The evening air was cool. The surface of the lake was still. The sky was slowly turning darker. Peaceful. Silent. Exactly what I needed. I sat down on a bench and let out a long breath. For a few minutes, I didn't think about anything. I just listened to the wind, the water, my own heartbeat. Then slowly, the thoughts came back, but this time, they were different. Clearer, sharper, stronger. I started asking myself questions I had never asked before. Why did she lie so easily? Why did her family feel comfortable excluding me? Why did no one think it was wrong? And the biggest question of all, what else had she lied about? That question stayed in my mind longer than the others. Because deep down, I knew this wasn't the first time. It was just the first time I caught her. I took out my phone again and opened our message history. I started scrolling, back through days, through weeks, through months, looking at everything, but seeing it differently now. There were gaps, times she said she was with family, but never invited me. Times she said she was busy, but couldn't explain with what. Times she avoided simple questions. At the time, I trusted her. Now, those same messages felt different. Suspicious, uncomfortable, wrong. My chest tightened again, but this time, I didn't feel weak. I felt awake. I looked out at the lake and made a quiet promise to myself. I would not be lied to again. I would not be disrespected again. And I would not ignore the truth, no matter how painful it was. My phone buzzed again. Another message from Emily. This time, I opened it. "Please come home. We need to talk." I stared at the words for a long moment. Then I locked the phone. No reply. Because for the first time, I didn't feel the need to run back. Instead, I did something else. Something calm. Something controlled. Something she would never expect. I started planning if there was something she was hiding. I was going to find it. Not with anger, not with shouting, but with truth. Real truth. Proof. Facts. Something that could not be denied. I stood up from the bench and walked back to my car. My steps were slow, steady, deliberate, because I knew the next move I made would change everything. That night, I didn't go home. I booked a room at a small hotel near the lake. I needed space. I needed clarity. I needed to think without her voice, without her tears, without her influence. Inside the quiet room, I sat on the edge of the bed and looked at my phone again. Then I opened my laptop and I started digging. I checked shared accounts. I checked past transactions. I checked location history that was still connected to our shared apps. Little things, simple things. But sometimes, simple things reveal the biggest truths. At first, everything looked normal. Then I noticed something strange. Several times, her location history didn't match what she told me. She said she was at her parents' house, but the location showed somewhere else. A different address. Same place. Repeated again and again. My heart started beating faster. I zoomed in on the map, looked at the street name, the building, the neighborhood. I had never heard of it before, and she had never mentioned it. Not once. A cold feeling ran down my spine, because now, this wasn't just about a party. This was something bigger, something hidden, something intentional. I leaned back in my chair and stared at the screen. All the pieces were slowly coming together. The lies, the distance, the exclusion, the secret location. I whispered to myself, barely breathing, "What are you hiding from me, Emily?" And in that quiet hotel room, with the soft light of the screen in front of me, I realized something that made my chest tighten. Whatever the truth was, I was very close to it. And when I finally uncovered it, nothing in my life would ever be the same again. I barely slept that night. Every time I closed my eyes, the same questions came back. That address, that location, that place she never told me about. It kept pulling at my mind like a loose thread I couldn't ignore. And by the time the sun started to rise, I had already made my decision. I was going there. The morning air was cold and quiet as I stepped outside the hotel. I got into my car, turned on the engine, and stared at the navigation screen for a few seconds. The address was already there, saved, waiting. I took a slow breath and started driving. The city slowly came to life around me. Shops opening, people walking, traffic building. But inside my car, everything felt still, focused, like I was heading towards something I couldn't turn away from. As I got closer, the neighborhood started to change. This wasn't near her parents' house. This wasn't anywhere she ever mentioned. This was a quiet residential street, lined with small modern homes and a few apartment buildings. I slowed down, checked the number again, matched it with the building in front of me. This was it. I parked across the street, sat there for a moment, watching, waiting. My hands rested on the steering wheel, but my mind was racing. I didn't want to jump to conclusions. I didn't want to assume the worst. But deep down, I already knew something wasn't right. A few minutes passed. Then, the front door of the building opened, and someone stepped out. My chest tightened instantly, because I recognized her. It was Emily. She stepped outside calmly, like she had done it many times before. She was dressed casually, relaxed, no sign of stress, no sign of someone who had just spent the night worried about her dying parents. I felt a sharp pain in my chest, but I stayed still, silent, watching. She looked around briefly, then started walking down the sidewalk. And then another person walked out behind her, a man. My entire body went cold. I didn't know him. I had never seen him before, but the way he looked at her, the way he walked beside her, the way they spoke so comfortably, told me everything I needed to know. I felt my grip tighten on the steering wheel. My jaw clenched. My heart pounded. But I didn't move. I didn't shout. I didn't step out. Because in that moment, I understood something very clearly. If I reacted now, I would only get excuses, denials, lies. But if I waited, I would get the truth. They stopped near the corner of the street. They stood close to each other, talking, smiling, like nothing in the world was wrong, like I didn't exist, like our marriage didn't exist. And then I saw something that made everything inside me go silent. He reached out and gently touched her face, and she didn't pull away. She leaned into it. That was it. No more doubt. No more confusion. No more questions. I slowly leaned back in my seat. My breathing became steady, calm, controlled, because the pain had turned into something else now. Something colder, something sharper, something stronger. Truth. I watched them for a few more seconds. Then I reached for my phone, and I took a photo. Clear, undeniable, proof. Because I wasn't going to argue. I wasn't going to beg. And I definitely wasn't going to let myself be manipulated. I was going to do this the right way. The smart way. The final way. They eventually walked away together, disappearing down the street. And I stayed in the car, completely still, staring straight ahead, letting the reality settle in. My wife had lied to me, not once, not just about a party, but about where she was, who she was with, and what she was doing behind my back. I closed my eyes for a moment, and when I opened them again, I felt different, stronger, clearer, done. I started the car, pulled away from the street, and drove off, without looking back, because there was nothing left there for me anymore. On the drive back, my mind was quiet. No more confusion, no more emotional chaos, just a plan, a clear, simple plan. I would go home. I would gather everything that belonged to me, every document, every record, every account, every piece of evidence I needed. Because this wasn't just about betrayal. This was about respect, truth, and consequences. By the time I reached the house, I already knew exactly what I was going to do next. And when I walked through that front door again, my life was about to change forever. When I opened the front door, the house felt different, quiet, heavy, like it already knew something had ended. Emily was sitting on the couch. The moment she saw me, she stood up quickly. Her eyes were red. Her voice was shaky. "Ethan, please, let me explain." I closed the door behind me slowly, calm, silent, controlled. I didn't raise my voice. I didn't show anger, because I wasn't angry anymore. I was done. I walked past her without saying a word and placed my keys on the table. She followed me, her footsteps quick, nervous